All right. Okay. All right. Well, seriously, Josh and I are in a good mood. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
It's your buddies, Josh and Dan. He's Josh, I'm Dan.
Yeah.
And we're the perfect parents. Welcome to the perfect parent.
Yeah, we changed it up because we've been really good
now
this
we're
last
perfect.
week.
All of a sudden, we're perfect.
All the advice is perfection.
Yeah. JK, just kidding.
Oh.
It's a pretty good parent because we're trying to be pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we're here with Josh, 20-year veteran in the therapist world, lots of knowledge. And today we're going to talk about the top 4 communication skills for parents. So we're going to give you 4 good takeaways.
Yeah.
Of how to communicate to your kids.
Yeah, and there are a lot of spinoffs from all of these, but break it into some basic categories. What to say, how to say it, when to say it, and what not to say. This is where I spend probably the majority of my time counseling parents and listening from kids is something in these 4 categories. So we're going to expand on those 4 today.
So this is a little misconception between me and my wife, by the way. When I go to counseling, I want good takeaways. Her take is that you don't always get good takeaways. Oh. But I feel like we can give you some good takeaways, right?
Well, that generically speaking, this is a generalization. Guys like bullet points, linear, takeaway, practical. Women, they like it for it to feel good. And there's an unloading and there's an understanding. The guys are like, I don't really care. You don't understand me. Just what do I do?
Yeah.
So there is that conversational
so
difference. Yeah, it's standard for the ladies to be like, I want to feel good about it. And the guy's like, well, what are we supposed to say? Like, what were the takeaways? What did he tell you?
Yeah.
So, yes. So we're going to be 2 guys and say, these are your takeaways.
Yeah.
But we're going to talk about the emotional kind of like flow of a conversation. So it should be helpful. I mean, it's absolutely helpful to moms and dads. This isn't like dad focused, but this is guy delivered, obviously.
Yes.
I'm a guy.
Yes.
Guy.
All right. I like it. So first takeaway.
Let's do how to say. I always
how to say it.
Yeah. I say what to say, but really how to say it, way more important. Okay. And so like, what's the how? The energy, the tone, like 90% of our communication is perceived and received through nonverbals and tone. So think about it. Like the words you use only have like a 10% impact. 90% of it is what we perceive the person's body language to be saying and what the tone of the voice is. So you can say some heavy things in a calm, kind voice, and someone can receive it better versus a compliment that's delivered in a weird tone or it sounds a little sarcastic and then it hits wrong. So how to say it is a really big deal.
Well, and this is awesome because I think the majority of people probably think, all right, what's my points? I got it, especially probably dads.
Yeah.
Saying, all right, here's my bullet points in my head. I'm going to get these across. And so their what is probably their first thing on their mind, not the how.
It's a great highlight because that's why a lot of kids like to talk to their moms.
Right.
More than their dads. because the mom will sit there and like prioritize the flow and the feel of the conversation where the dad is prioritizing the messaging and the points. Which if you want to sit down and talk to someone, you've had a tough day, you're not wanting someone to tell you the points. You're wanting to like be consoled, understood, validated, and held or felt cared for in that space. So in general, people, I mean, I just had a client yesterday. It was, I've always talked to my mom. I don't really talk to my dad about these things. She's a great listener. He gives me like some bullet points or checks out.
Yeah.
Right. Not that all dads check out, and hopefully this process helps dad plug in versus checking out. But so how to say, calmly, respectfully, that's huge. Like, again, people misprioritize the importance of how you treat the kid in the conversation. They've done something wrong, let's say. Like, I'll give you an example. Last night, our son came and talked to my wife and I about his frustrations with his sister's use of the bathroom and how her stuff is like evolving and taking up all kinds of space. And he's really bothered by it.
That's fair.
Right? He did a great job articulating why it's not okay. He's talked to her. It didn't go well. And so I'm going to go talk to our daughter, and it's going to be a corrective conversation. I need her to stop doing something and do it a different way, right? I could go in and say, you should know better. Look at this space. Half of it's your brother's, half of it's yours. You need to do this, right? But that doesn't work very well, especially with a 14-year-old who's a normal, emotionally up and down girl. So I go in and I knock on the door. I don't barge in. And I say, can I talk to you real quickly? She's like, yeah. It's like, hey, so your brother did a really good job communicating like his confusion / frustration with the bathroom. And she's like, what are you talking about? Well, he's feeling that your stuff is spreading all over and it's not fair. And he said he's tried to talk to you about it. He doesn't have a lot of confidence it's going to go well. And so he's asked me to talk to you about it. So will you please be more conscientious of your stuff and not taking up his space? I said more than that, but...
And how'd that go?
She smiled very like... She's like smiling like, oh, he's cute. And I appreciate your attempt, Dad, to not bark at me right now. And she's like, yes.
Yes. Yeah.
And I said, okay, so you're going to like commit to like keeping your stuff on the side of the bathroom and making sure you leave the shower like ready for him versus just for you or something, right?
Right.
She's like, yes. So how I want to use my energy to help her absorb this thing that's better for her life and better for her brother's life. So tone, I walked in, I didn't tell her, sit down, I have something to tell you. I was respectful of her time. Can I talk to you really quickly? It was clear. It wasn't some vague thing. It was conversational. It wasn't more a lecture. I didn't go through all the things she should know and all the things and all the mistakes she's made. And then I actually like, because I'm a very touching father, I had my hand on her shoulder to also kind of like massage the situation to just keep it like calm versus, you know, arms crossed.
Right.
She's back there. I'm over here telling her what to do. I don't want her to be in that space. So I try to control it as much as I can with my energy, and it makes it easier for her to hear that.
Yeah. So I like to throw out a pro tip for our golf fans as well, because I think there's a great analogy here. Okay. So Annika Sorenstam, best women's golfer of all time, right? Tiger Woods women's golf, amazing. She talks about before she hits a golf shot, she stands in the she calls it the thinking box, right? So right before she hits the golf shot, she stands in the thinking box, and she thinks about all the things she wants to do with that shot, right? And so whatever she's doing with her swing, where she's aiming, you know, it's going to hit a draw, what she's doing. And I'm just thinking, how nice would it be to have sort of a thinking box? Because like executing a golf shot, for you non-golfers out there, it's, you just go out there and hit a golf ball, big deal. Well, you know, if you actually want to do well at it, you have to put a lot of intention and focus into that, right?
Yeah.
And so I think there could just be a really great analogy here of creating that thinking box for yourself as a parent before you go in to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And then you can go through that checklist, right? What is my tone? What's my, like what's my intention here? How am I, am I being defensive? Am I being, whatever, and go through that list. So.
Yeah, I love that. Just the prioritizing setting intention for important conversations. Mm-hmm. If you think about where your kids rank in your life, most parents say they're the top. But then how much prep do you do in having important conversations? A lot of parents make like no prep.
Yeah.
They just go have it. But they would never deliver like a big report or an important presentation in this thing in their matters like less in their life, like work.
Yeah.
They put hours into fine-tuning it and making it perfect. And then we unintentionally or non-intentionally just like fire off stuff to our kids and then get frustrated when it doesn't go well. Versus like, well, did you envision how you wanted it to go? Like I encourage a lot of clients in growing areas of their life, moving outside of their comfort zone, imagining themselves as an actor playing a desired role. And so what's the parent role? This parent is acting as though they are like calm, secure, confident, but also very caring, and their ego's not in threat here. And they're just going to sit there and like going to get their kid to do this thing, but very like respectfully. So like go act that scene out.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're an actor, you practice and practice and practice. You look in the mirror, you watch tape, you get that feedback, and then you go and like try to do that. It'll go better if we put that level of intention in it. So go into your thinking box, like, all right, well, what do I want them to know? Where are they likely to be defensive? Where am I likely to get defensive? How do I need to control? What do I need to control in terms of my own reaction if she or he says this or does this, right? The more you do it, the less practice you need in preparation. But for a lot of parents that aren't aware of this and don't practice it, you're going to need to set some intentions, and you should probably like look in the mirror or talk into your phone and film yourself to see like, how do you come across?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. So especially back to that golf analogy, mechanics and the way your body is in the shot and things you're working on is so important, right? And so this, with you saying that communication is 90% nonverbal, right? So it's like, maybe it's good to go and practice when you're in that thinking box, look at your actual physical state, right?
Yeah.
And practice your physical
What is it
movements.
communicating?
What are you communicating?
How would you
right
react
now?
to that if you saw?
Yeah.
And it's okay to fake. Because your intentions are pure. You're trying to align your behavior with your intentions. What are your intentions? To be helpful, to fix something, teach something, resolve something. Those are good intentions when it comes to our kids. So aligning our energy with that is not fake, right? Someone's like, well, that's not how I feel. I'm pissed at them. They need to know that. Well, do they? Like, what's the lesson? That their parents were mad?
Right.
Or that they did something maybe that was going to make someone mad like their parents, or maybe future people, not just their parents. That's the lesson. Not just like, well, I'm upset. Like, well, sometimes our upset reaction isn't most relevant. Maybe that's our thing, right? And so to put our stuff in check. I had a tougher conversation with my daughter the other day. She's super social, and I pick her up from lots of things, and she's never on time. And this time, not just like not on time, but like half hour late, which is fine. I'm listening to a podcast in my car. I'm like, this is actually pretty relaxing, but oh my gosh, this feels disrespectful. She's just staying inside the basketball game when I've asked her to come out. Right. She comes out. It's 45 minutes after pickup time. I was listening to a podcast, so I was having a good time, but I would have stayed home and not left as early to pick her up, right? So I said, hey, we need to talk. This is in the car. This feels disrespectful to me. Like, this is my life too. And I didn't just say this is my life. I had some other words in there.
Yeah, choice words.
This is my life too. Uh-huh. It's not okay for you to like not respond when I call. I'm doing this for you. I want you to have fun. I want you to see friends. I want you to be plugged into life. But it can't be like disrespecting my time too, because my stuff matters also. I will continue to say yes when I can because I want you to explore life. But please be more respectful, because your inability to answer the phone when I call, when I pick you up at a friend's house, or you're not replying to text messages with like times and dates and location, that's got to stop. And she had like tears in her eyes. I could tell she felt bad. And she's like, okay. And it could have been a flat out argument of like, you always and you never, which is on some of the do not say. But I was firm and it was impassioned, but it wasn't mean and it wasn't disrespectful. Mm-hmm. And she just heard it. And then I grabbed her hand as we pulled out of the parking lot, even though I had just like got, really firm with her and actually cussed, not at her, but like while talking with her. She's 14, by the way. And I just held her hand.
Sometimes it proves the point, or just it adds
emphasizes,
a little.
Right? It's like the two exclamation points that you like to use on some of the text messages.
Good emphasis on the syllable.
Emphasis. Yeah. And then I quickly wanted to not be mad, because it's silly to get mad. And so I forced myself / wanted to hold her hand. And so we're driving away, and I just reach over and we hold hands for a few seconds, communicating, we're going to be okay. I'm okay. I love you more than this event, and this event matters. Mm-hmm. So that's like the how is that energy flow. Be an actor, set intention, go into your thinking box, and then go practice. It'll go so much better when your energy is in your desired spot versus it just like going, wherever your energy is, nervous, angry, sad. And then you don't set intention and you go in and you like pull the lid off of that, shake up a bottle and like pull the lid off. You're like, well, here it is. And then blame it on them because they did this thing that caused your emotional outburst. That's just immature parenting on our part.
Are there any quick, when you're going into that thinking box and saying, okay, I'm about to have this conversation, and how, I guess any quick tips, like just the classic, take 3 deep breaths if you need to, bring your heart rate down, so I guess assuming, a parent's fired up and they're coming in hot, right?
Yeah.
Just any quick tips there?
Yeah. Breathing exercises, I think, depending on how much time you have, the best is 2 minutes, but you don't need 2 minutes. I'd say, do 3 very intentional deep breaths. Close your eyes. And as cheesy as it might sound, like reset to hey, be the parent you want to be. Don't be the reactive parent. How would you want to be approached? So
if you have a sad face, do the happy and then bring it back up.
Some classic mime work will be great. You won't look weird or anything.
Yeah, Libby will be like, "What the hell are you doing over there? Don't worry about it."
Intentional parenting.
You're gonna have the best nonverbal body communication you've ever seen in your life.
The visioning component to that is, how do you want it to end? You'd want to be able to walk away, most likely with a hug, a handshake, some sort of agreement, like this is good, right? Mm-hmm. Well, then you have to you got to communicate and show up in the space that allows that outcome.
Yeah.
You got to be thinking like, I want this outcome. Some parents I just want them to stop this thing. Like, okay, well, your energy might not make that possible if you're just trying to go control it. Well, they should know better, and I've had it, and they need to know that. Most likely you're not going to get as much out of your conversation. You might teach the thing well enough, but why not get more?
Yeah.
The pretty good parent strives for more resolution towards the end. It doesn't just deliver and then get out. It actually strengthens the relationship through the difficult conversation.
Yeah. No, I get it. All right. So that's number 1 is how to say it. So we've set intention on how to say it. So number 2,
what to say. Yeah. So in general, it's better to use vision casting language. So my hope is in the future. So with my daughter in the bathroom, my hope is that the bathroom feels good for both of you, that you both feel like there's space and you have access to your stuff, and the other person's use of the bathroom or their belongings aren't getting in your way. So I expressed a vision for the future for her in that conversation. It's not coming in saying, I'm here to tell you you're wrong.
Yeah.
I'm here to highlight that. Yeah. My intention is that she feels good about the bathroom and her brother does. If it's a difficult thing, the positive sandwich is always a good idea, right? So if you have to address this thing that you feel like they're really insecure about or really reactive to, it neutralizes it to lead with a positive. In general, you do so let's say she was super reactive about the bathroom. I would say in general, you're conscientious with your space, which I appreciate, and you're not selfish with how you function in our house. Mm-hmm. That being said, it's been brought to our attention that your stuff is evolving into your brother's space, and then I would say at the end, the sandwich piece, but I know you appreciate and care for your brother, and so I'm pretty sure this is going to go well. If it doesn't, we'll talk again, something like that. But it creates a good rhythm. It doesn't leave the big heavy thing. It doesn't lead with it and make them reactive, and it doesn't leave them just at the last taste in their mouth to have this negative thing that you need them to change. People are really emotional, and kids are even more emotional because they have less maturity. So sandwiching it in a neutralizing, positive way allows them to eat the whole thing.
So first layer of bread, positive.
Yeah.
The meat.
The tougher.
Not necessarily negative. It's more of
the lesson, the problem.
What what's the other word I'm looking for when you
critique?
Positive criticism, I guess.
Constructive criticism is the meat in the middle.
And then the big
we're going to be okay. It doesn't even have to be like a "you're awesome" comment. It's like, thanks for listening. I appreciate your ability to like hear this. Mm-hmm. I believe in you. We'll get through this. You know, something like that. That's like, oh, okay. Versus like, all right, I told you what you need to hear. I'm out.
Yeah.
And you need to think about it. Like, okay, they probably should think about it. But
how have I never heard of a positive sandwich before? This is fantastic.
Oh, no.
I love sandwiches, Josh.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. All right, so we got vision casting and positive sandwiches.
Yeah, what else? Affirming. From my perspective versus absolutes. You always, you never. From my perspective, which is acknowledging that we all have different perspectives. You're not saying it's not true. You're just not going there because it's a trap. I say you always and you never. And if that's not true, now someone's going to argue with me versus hear my point. It's not, the point isn't that they always or never. The point that they did it once or 1,000 times. I don't like it. We need it to change. But if I say always and they say not always, just the other day I did this, now we're talking about a dumb thing. We're off track.
Yeah.
Right. So don't use absolutes. Use, from my perspective, it seems as though you have a tendency from time to time. Now you might be thinking, well, they do it every time. Don't say you do this every time.
Right.
Say sometimes. Because the point isn't how often. The point is that they've done it and you feel like they could be better at it. Mm-hmm. Right. So being mindful of what words you use in that sense. The best parenting communication skills or skill is just good questions. I was
going to ask that one because I think we've talked about this before, and I think they have worked night and day with me and my kids.
Good.
Just coming in with a question. It's unbelievable.
Well, it pulls them into the conversation and it makes them feel included, empowered. You want them to exercise their critical thinking skills. You don't want them to just be a little robot downloading all of your stuff because that's not how life works. Like they need to be able to make in the moment adjustments and comprehension and calculations. Asking them questions like is that practice, right? Like, hey, did that go the way you wanted it to go? Yeah. You're thinking you blew that thing up.
Yeah.
You made a fool of yourself. You're thinking that, right? But what do you say? How do you think it went? Mm-hmm. And you leave room for them to have their own reflection that might already be where you want them to be. They might already be thinking the way you want them to think. And you don't have to go on record saying you sucked and blew that up.
Right.
Right? You ask them. Now, if they say, I think it went great. And you're like, oh my gosh, what are we talking about? How did it go great? You say, oh, really? Like what part? Like what makes you feel that way? It could have come across as like,
do you realize how big of an idiot you look like right now?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
It could be, yeah. You don't want to back them into a corner with the question. The question really is neutral to see how they see it, because how they see it is insightful. You want to know how they see life, how they felt about it, right?
Well, to me, it goes back to that vision casting, right? It's kind of like asking a question of sort of what vision do you want to sort of project for your own life, right? What kind of person do you want to be? What kind of, do you feel like you handle that as the type of person you want to be, right?
Yeah.
Things like that.
Because here's why it's so important, because as kids get older, they get into their teenage years, they're working on their independence, they're working on like separation from mom and dad. And if they feel like mom and dad are just trying to make them like mom and dad, they're going to say absurd things. Like they're going to start fighting against you on things they don't even really believe because they're just trying to like create distance. Mm-hmm. But if you ask a question that's not backing them into a corner, they're kind of confused if you've never done this before. They're waiting for the other shoe to drop. Yeah. Like, why are you just asking me this? You usually tell me what to do.
Right.
You really want to know what I'm doing? Now, the first few times they might not be honest because they don't trust the process. But if you do it early with your kids early, they get used to this process. And now you're building their critical thinking skills. You're helping them be more self-aware of how they do feel about it, how it went, versus it staying in their head where it's all calculated and not maybe processed very well. and they don't benefit from an outside perspective or a parent's guidance. So asking them good questions is like the best thing. Other than managing your energy, that's the top. Mm-hmm. You could say dumb shit and be really good with energy, and it's probably going to go okay. The next best thing is use really good questions, open-ended, not too narrow, that can maybe lead them or lead the discussion to like more insight and more learning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, how did that go? How do you think that went? Did you, if you have an idea that they didn't do it, a proper way, let's say, you'd say, did you handle it the way you wanted to handle it? How did that? Are you pleased with that outcome? And usually their answers are probably going to be in line with yours. Like they're not usually way off. Most kids have the similar kinds of like calculations and considerations as the parents. But if the parents don't make space for the kid to say that, they put them on the defense and make it like attack on ego or competency, the kid has a harder time being honest about that thing. And then the learning is squashed, right? They're like, you don't get to talk about it because you went in and made a comment that made them get defensive, and you shut the conversation down by shutting them down.
Yeah.
Versus like, what'd you think of the round today?
Right.
I thought it sucked, and like I thought I played horrible, and you're like, actually, I thought you played well, but don't say that yet. Oh, why do you say that?
Yeah.
Well, this. Oh, okay. Does that happen very often? Well, yeah. Like to you or to like all golfers? Pretty much all golfers. Oh, okay. So it's a normal thing. Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, if it's a normal thing, then maybe it's like not that bad of a round, right? Like what would you want to change? What are some things you want to focus on? And then you kind of pivot to like moving from critiquing to growing, right? But that's a question. Like you can use just tons and tons of questions to steer the conversation in all kinds of directions versus direct comments or judgments usually just stunt the conversation or blow it up, right? Shutting them down and they stop listening, or they argue and now you're in an argument. Like neither one is productive. So good questions is something you can just work on. It's not just kids. Like humans in general would rather be asked or would do better with conversational guidance than commands.
Yeah. Well, and it worked great for myself and my daughter the other day. So, typically I think we've talked about, so she's 7 and pretty strong-headed, I think is maybe a good term to use. And nice she does not like to back down, right? And so, she had a moment, and I can't remember exactly what was happening, but, just stood her ground, right? And said, hey, that's not acceptable. It's kind of one of those type of situations. And I literally asked her that. I said, did you feel like you handled that the way you wanted to? And so right away she just went, and then
yes.
And then like
she made her think,
and then she crossed her arms, right?
Yeah.
And then she kind of stomped off. And so I just let her sit with it. And then she came back like 10 minutes later and goes, hey, Daddy, I'm really sorry. I didn't handle that the way I wanted to. And I was like, what? Oh. So, it really is awesome. And I think maybe another piece of advice from my personal experience is just, you can be patient with it, right? You don't have to ask a question and imagine it's just going to be perfect. But because, they'll go think about it. And,
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the when part of it. Like when to say it, when to pause and let it percolate a little bit and marinate. Just because you want it solved doesn't mean the timing is right. Yeah, and we'll get to that. I want to say one other thing. What to say. It's really important that you hear their experience and that you validate it. So validating isn't necessarily agreeing, although it feels like it. And some kids feel like if you validate, you're agreeing. So you could say, it sounds like to you, this is how the game went. This is how your day went. This is how this thing went to your friend, and it made you feel bad. You're not agreeing with them, okay? If you said, that makes sense to me, now to some kids, that might sound like I'm agreeing with you. And some parents withhold validation because they don't want their kids to think they are agreeing with that behavior.
Right.
But to say, they did this dumb thing, right? They got in trouble at school for doing this thing. And they explained why. And it was like, retaliatory because this other kid said this thing and then they said this thing back and then they got in trouble, right? You want to validate saying, oh, I can see why that felt like that was unfair to you.
Is it maybe a good analogy? Just validate in a way that they feel like they're seen.
Yes.
Right.
That
just,
they're
doesn't
that
have
you
to be
understand
that they're right
them.
or wrong or anything,
Yeah.
but just that
you could even say
seen.
like, I mean, depending on the age of the kid, they're gonna think it sounds weird, but like, I see you in that.
Yeah.
Or I can hear your experience.
Avatar. I see you.
Yeah.
Which is how they,
powerful.
Which is nice. It is powerful.
Everyone wants to be seen and understood. Yeah. So you're right to say, I can understand where you're coming from and how that made you feel. Most parents skip that process and move right to what they think is more valuable, and that is the lesson or the lecture. Mm-hmm. But most people... I
just thought of a great saying. Can we say lectures are for losers, maybe? Losers?
Sure.
Or something like that? I don't know.
Let's shame all
the lecturers. All dad lecturers out there. Maybe bring the awareness. That is my Achilles heel. I've probably,
You're losing when you're lecturing.
Exactly.
You want to win. Don't lecture.
Yeah.
Converse, ask good questions. But validate their experience, their day. That sounds tough. I'm sorry that went like that for you. Versus I told you so. That's a don't say. Mm-hmm. Well, remember we talked about that. This is what we said was happened, and now it happened. That's dumb. That's shaming. Okay? Right. Say, what are you learning from this process? Don't bring up how many times you told them to do it differently. That's ego driven. Mm-hmm. That's not teaching. That's about us, not them. Right? But to say, like, I can tell that was sad, frustrating, hard. I understand why that created anxiety for you. Let that sit. Like concrete needs to dry before you can go tear around on it. Like, let the validation sit a little bit before you pivot to lecture or tips. You're not moving to lecture. Problem solving, game planning, learning opportunity. Before you do there, go to that space. Let the validation like do its work. So it kind of like creates this like healing process, right? So there's a lot of power in just listening and validating. So like the what to say, something that captures your understanding of their experience. Mm-hmm. I hear you. That sounds hard. It sounds like you're sad about that. It sounds like you're excited for that. It sounds like you regret how you handle that. Those are all reflective words that kind of capture this concept of validating. And now they feel like you care about them, you see them, and they're more likely to listen if you have any wisdom to share in a little bit. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another thing to say, I believe you have what it takes to get through this. A lot of kids don't have the experience or the confidence or the belief that they need to push through tough stuff. And we're lending them trust. We're like lending our kids confidence in some ways until they can have their own, right? I believe you have what it takes to get through that, even if it takes a few rounds. Even if you fail a few times, I believe you're smart enough and your work ethic is good enough that you'll figure it out. That goes a long ways to giving a kid a sense of like confidence and drive that's not perfectionistic, like oriented, right? Because if a kid says, like I hear kids say often, my parents tell me I can do everything and I'm great. They don't know me because I just failed. The parents highlighted performance instead of integrity and perseverance.
Which is a theme we've talked about a lot, right?
Yeah.
The difference of validating performance or an end goal versus work ethic or you're trying hard, not giving up.
Yeah.
All of those attributes, right?
The engine behind it is perseverance, confidence, work ethic, belief. Mm-hmm. The outcomes are just the scores, the snapshots, the trophies, right, the grades, good or bad. If the kid thinks they're good because parents said they're smart and they got a D on a test, now they're going to think my parents don't know me. And kids tell me this often. They stop listening to their parents because the parents' words don't match reality.
Right.
And then they think my parents don't really even know me because they say I'm smart and I just got a D. But if a parent says, you are smart, but that doesn't mean you won't get a D. I'm saying you're a good student and you'll figure it out how to learn from it. You might get a D. You'll probably get a lot of A's. You're a smart kid. But smart kids still get bad grades from time to time, and a good student figures it out and learns from it. Mm-hmm. So you can even talk about grades. You just don't make it the only focus, and you really want to make sure you're highlighting, I believe in your ability, not necessarily your score today. Kids thrive on that. Like someone lending them a sense of confidence by believing in them removes the dire, the urgency of success today and gives them like a long-term chance to like push through it. So there's a ton more always, but vision casting, positive sandwich, affirmation from my perspective.
Good questions in there.
Good questions. Intention. What was it? The thinking circle. Love that.
Yeah.
I believe this about you. I believe in you for these reasons, whether that happens today or not. Like you'll figure it out.
Hashtag build confidence.
Yeah. Yep. Oh my gosh. You're just fertilizing the soil immensely.
Oh, I love it, Josh. So that's basically what to say now.
What to say.
3 is when to say it.
When to say it. When you're in a calm place, though. So when the parent could say, oh yeah, I'm at like a below a 4 or even maybe below a 3 out of 10. Like their heart rate's low, their breathing is normal, their cadence is like nice and calm.
So how is this different from number 1 of how to say it? All right. Well, I guess it kind of goes hand in hand though, right? So
yeah.
How and when?
The when, they're all connected pretty closely, right? But the when is, hold on, I know what to say, I have the vision, but I'm still worked up, or they are worked up. Okay, you got to hit pause. Not right now. You want it to be successful. Think about it. Like the best outcome is one that they walk away feeling confident or heard, or you guys feel aligned in the direction moving forward. Urgency is irrelevant in most cases.
Which just goes back to our de-escalation talk. And
yes.
I think we agreed that on a scale of 1 to 10 of being fired up, both parties need to be at below 5 or 3.
Maybe like the collective score, definitely below a 5. So that was the point number 2, when to say it, when they can hear you. Like what's their body language communicating? Are they open or are they still escalated? If they're still escalated, don't push a tough, a complicated conversation. It just isn't going to go well.
Right.
I will sit in the car and drive for minutes without saying something if I can sense one of my kids is upset. If I can't calm them down with like a comment or touch, I just let it sit, because sometimes time is enough to bring that score down or that number down.
Yeah.
When this is kind of aware, but is the setting right? Like, is it in front of their friends? Never do that.
Right.
Is it in front of other people in general? Not a good idea. It's too big of an ego hit. Right? It's too humbling to like make them swallow this lesson in front of very many people. So it should be, anything that's like emotionally charged or reflective of who they are, it should be private.
Right.
Some conversations, like blow-ups in the car when the whole family's there, or in the hotel room, or, this is not the time for like meaningful conversations. It's just de-escalation. So then I'd say, go hone your de-escalation skills, that podcast we did. Do that before you're getting into the messaging of like what to do differently next time. That should occur in a calm, neutral space where you can set these intentions and deliver it. So the win is when both people are calm enough, when other people aren't around, they've had enough time to like maybe process it. If it just happened and you want to like go like, what'd you think about that? And what have you learned so far? And you're like, the game just ended, Dad. Back the hell off.
Right.
But to like wait until like they've settled in, now you're in the car, now you're on the car ride home. It's like, okay, hey, how you doing? How'd you think you played? What changes would you make? How was your day? Just like us, like you got right out of a tough work meeting, and your partner's like, well, did you do what you wanted to do? And it's like, oh God, I'm just trying to make sense of the stupid meeting. Like, give me some space.
Right.
So give them space to make sure they've had a chance to process it a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I actually wasn't there for it, but one of the golf tournaments that one of the boys was in, Tyler, I think he lost to an eagle on the 18th hole for the state championship. And Libby said he just ran into the car and cried for an hour, just a full hour, just needed an hour.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not a
heartbreaking loss.
You know, so it's like
I'd cry for him. That's hard.
So
that's appropriate, man.
Giving that space and
it takes a lot of wisdom and courage and health as a parent to let your kids feel all the necessary feelings. Like that's a sad event.
Yeah.
Right? To cry over a sad event is appropriate.
Yeah.
But some parents are so bothered by their kids being sad that they try to go like, hey, it's just golf. And hey, you played great though.
Yeah.
Like just let it. It's already in there. You've got to let it come out. Mm-hmm. He didn't cry for 24 hours. He cried for 1 hour.
Yeah.
And he's over it. Even though it's like he'll forever remember that last hole. He's not crying anymore about it.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Maybe. No, yeah, he's good.
Every night I hear him weep as well as sleep.
Yeah.
All right, what not to say?
Yeah, like it.
Oh, geez, a million things. I touched on this a little bit ago. Like, don't use absolutes. You always, you never. Those are argumentative. They're untrue. I mean, 99% of the time, because no one always or never does anything. So don't put the emphasis on how often. Just address the thing that they're doing that needs to get addressed. Now, you can say, like, this feels like it happens often. But even that's like, well, not all the time. Just the other day, okay, you're right, you did. But is that the way you want it to go? Right? So what not to say? Absolutes. Don't give comparisons. We don't like to be compared. Right? I mean, most humans are miserable because they engage in comparisons. Don't compare your kids to anyone. Ask them who they want to be and hold them to that, or help hold them to that. Don't set the bar for them. Don't mention what other kids are doing. I mean, imagine what it'd be like for them to come home and be like, oh, Dad, guess what so-and-so's dad says to them every day they come home from school. They're a really good dad.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, geez, I feel like you're attacking me. And, well, does their dad, have to deal with blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Don't compare. No absolutes.
We can probably do a whole spin-off on no comparisons and dealing with social media.
Inevitably, right? It feels it's no wonder, like the research reveals, that people feel bad.
Yeah. To
indirect or unintentionally or unconsciously be comparing the whole time. Where they went for a vacation, how do they look, what their job is, or how hot their partner is, or whatever it is. It's really difficult not to compare, and kids already are exposed to it more than we were when we grew up, because we didn't have that. So they've already have way more comparison going on, and so they don't need to hear that. They actually need to learn that comparing themselves is toxic, unless it's motivating in a positive way. There can be some sort of comparison, but for most people, it's negative and self-judging.
Right.
What also not to say, these horrible, damning predictions about their life. Like when we were kids, like the general statement was you're going to be flipping burgers forever if you don't. Kids don't need. Now, some people respond well to threats and to challenges. Okay. But in general, it's not good parenting to say, the track that you're on right now, you're going to be in jail, or you're going to be dead, or you're going to never have a job, and you're going to have no friends, and you're going to be in the basement. That's not helpful. That's our response, our distaste for their existence or their choices. If it's not helpful, don't say it.
Yeah.
So being aware of what's coming out of our mouth and how we're saying it should prevent damning predictions. Now, if you said, hey, I said this the other day to my daughter, I don't care if you play college soccer. Honestly, I want you to be healthy and happy. I could care less. If you want to play college soccer, you're going to have to work harder. But I don't care if you work harder. I don't care if you play. If you want to play, though, you're going to have to practice harder than a lot of the other girls because you haven't played as much as they've played. That's not damning. I sandwiched it. Mm-hmm. I love you and don't care whether you play or not. I don't need you to play anything. If you want to play, you're going to have to play harder and work harder because you're behind. And again, I don't care if you play anything. I love you. I just want you to have a good time, right? The damning predictions are, well, you're not going to make shit if you don't play harder.
Right.
You're like, true, but so unnecessary, right? And now it sounds like you're shit versus you're not going to, it's just so heavy to swallow that. So don't do the damning predictions.
Yeah.
Do possible outcomes, right? Like, hey, are you okay if you don't play college soccer? Because I think most people that play, their collegiate athletes, like, spend a ton of time on their sport for a long time early on. Like, are you okay not doing it? No. Okay. Then we should talk about what you're willing to do for it, right? The question to open up the conversation versus a prediction about the road she's on. Like, people just don't respond well to saying you're on this road. Mm-hmm. There's like not a lot to work with. You're like, oh, I don't want to be on that road. Well, you are. Versus, hey, it looks like you're on this road. Is that what you want to be on? No. Where would you like to go? That road. Oh, okay. Want to talk? Do you want to talk about that? Or do you have it? You got a plan, or do you want to brainstorm it? Right. So you empower. It works at lots of ages, more and more so when they're teenagers.
And again, I think you can probably empower by going back to those questions, right? Like, oh, you do want to play college soccer? What do you think the habits are of somebody who's
totally
going to play college soccer, right?
Yeah.
Are they making their dad wait for 45 minutes outside? Just joking. Too soon.
No, they're more thoughtful. You're never going to make it. Okay. Another, like, what not to say is something we've already talked about, but it's important to highlight. You want to not talk more than you listen. So you'll talk less when you're asking more questions than you are lecturing, just by ratio. So make a priority is to say, at the end of this conversation, I want them to feel like they talked maybe more than I did.
Maybe that could be another tip for the thinking box before you go into try to preface yourself by saying, I'm going to make sure that I listen more than I talk in this communication, right?
Yeah. Definitely set some intentions when you're in that thinking box. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, the emotions and the content can determine where it goes. It won't go there if you have good intentions. Yeah. If you're dialed on your intentions, it's likely to go the way you want, or at least it's more likely to go. If you don't, we're like, we'll see how it goes. I always tell people when they say that, like, no. You're handing it over to happenstance and to forces. You can set intention and say, regardless of the weather, regardless of how this person shows up, regardless of their attitude, I'm going to show up in this space, in this way. Like, oh, that's empowering, right? So as a parent, I'm going to show up with kindness, correction if necessary, understanding, and I want to ask really good questions so at least they feel valued and, like, empowered. It's great. They could shut down. It could go horribly. But if you can prioritize those things, you could say you did your best. It's probably going to go well if you do those things, because kids don't want to be jerks.
Right.
They're just provoked, usually by their parents, or it's, triggered by the stuff that's inside of them already. Yep. Sometimes it's not us. It's their day. It's their worry. It's their what ifs. And we just tend to poke it and not know it. And then we get offended. And we fire back versus, like, no, let it come out. That's like a river that needs to, like a volcano that needs to, like, flow. Get it out. Don't get in the way. Don't take it personal. They're not always, like, emotionally mature. So let it come out.
Yeah.
What else not to say? I mean, just don't say dumb stuff. Like, God, don't be an idiot.
Right.
If joking is part of your family culture, you can say a lot and you can have a lot of fun. If it's not, like, don't do jokes.
Yeah.
Don't try to make everything funny if your kids don't like that.
I would say my advice on that is don't err on that side. If I would say more so with my spouse, probably.
Yeah.
But like, when, like, sarcasm, it's like, yeah, well, we've had 20 years of sarcasm is great, but it can be that one conversation and it just goes poorly, and it just, I don't know. For me personally, I would probably, like, if it's a real serious thing, I would steer away from it, right?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Great.
So, this is awesome, Josh. All right, so to recap, the 4 communication skills for parents, for the pretty good parent: 1, how to say it; 2, what to say; 3, when to say it; and 4, what not to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was awesome. Can't wait to
Go practice.
Go practice.
Yeah, let's all go practice.
Gonna get in my thinking box and.
Mom, Dad's in his thinking box again.
He's been in there for 3 hours.
Leave him alone.
He's just sitting there.
You can't visualize it accurately. He still keeps stumbling at the last delivery. He hooks that last shot.
And there it goes.
Awesome. Well, let's go be pretty good.
Yep, go be pretty good. Thank y'all, and we'll see you
guys.
next time.
Share your victories.
Yep.
We don't want to hear your losses. Share those someplace else. We want to hear your victories.
We want to hear all the victories and questions. Yeah. So.
Yeah, always.
All right. Thank y'all. Go
Thanks,
be pretty
Dan.
good parents.
Thanks, guys.
Peace.